What is going on, y'all? It is the Caveman back at it again with another video. And today we're going to discuss the 5 teams that I think have the most pressure on their shoulders to have a successful 2023 NFL draft class. I feel like sometimes the importance of the NFL draft gets overlooked or maybe even forgotten when at the end of the day, this is where Super Bowl teams are truthfully made. Of course, it's always important to land the right free agents and trade for the correct guys when deemed necessary to round out a roster. But the bottom line is this is where it all begins. A singular draft class can alter the future of a franchise, whether it be positive or whether it be negative, in so many different fashions. But before we get into it, I have to give a shout out to my partner Thrive Fantasy. If you guys are interested in sports betting, specifically on player props, go check out Thrive. You can bet on the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, MMA, golf. I mean, whatever you want to bet on, they freaking got it. They have all sorts of different contests as well if you're interested in that type of format. But the best part is, as a new user, if you use the link down in the description below to sign up using code CAVE, C-A-V-E, you get a 100% deposit match on your initial deposit. $20 becomes 40 becomes 80, so on and so forth. And they also are always offering different types of promotions for new users. So if you sign up, there's usually something like a LeBron James half a point type of leg that you can get. It's pretty much free. So if you are interested, as I mentioned, link in the description, use code CAVE. It would help me out a lot. I greatly appreciate it. But let's get into the video. All right, so these 5 teams are listed in specific order. So number 5 does have the lowest amount of pressure out of the 5. And then, of course, number 1 has the most. That being said, at number 5, I have the Arizona Cardinals. This team is such an interesting case because just a couple of years ago, they were on top of the world. They were the last undefeated team in football. Ever since they suffered their first loss to end that undefeated streak, things have gone downhill fast, and I mean at a substantial rate. I feel like I haven't seen a positive news headline about the Arizona Cardinals since that undefeated streak happened. From all the drama that Kyler got himself caught up into, and then he got hurt. DeAndre Hopkins missed, 13, 14 games between that injury and then the suspension the following year. Last year, they traded their first-round pick for Marquise Brown, and then he ends up getting hurt. J.J. Watt retires, A.J. Green retires, Cliff Kingsbury gets canned, rightfully so. They hired John Gannon to replace him, despite the fact that there were much more qualified candidates out there. But the cherry on top, their last 3 or so draft classes since Kyler himself was drafted to Arizona have been flat out terrible, borderline useless. No wonder why they're in the position they're in right now. It's been a tumultuous last few years for this franchise, to say the least. Now it's up to the new regime and head coach John Gannon and general manager Monty Ossenfort to put together a draft class that can get this team on the right track. They have the franchise quarterback. That's the toughest part. The 8 selections that they have in the NFL draft this year are so important for what the future might look like for this franchise, specifically because they have the 3rd overall selection. These are the kind of picks you cannot whiff on. If they were to mishandle this class and mishandle this pick specifically, they may never have this type of capital while Kyler Murray is their quarterback again. And while that might be deemed a good thing, they could be sent in the spiral of mediocrity, meaning that they're constantly going to be a 7 to 8 win team, but they'll never quite be good enough to get you over the hump. Therefore, they'll be mediocre, and they'll never have draft capital high enough to get them out of that rut. That's exactly how playoff droughts begin. I'm a Bills fan, I would know. Long story short, the pressure is on. I think this is the draft class that needs to be capitalized on the most to really kickstart this rebuild and get this team on the right track, because if it's not utilized correctly, they may never have this type of capital to do so again. The 4th team that I view to have a ton of pressure on their shoulders is the Houston Texans, and I'm not sure if this is controversial or not, and if it is, I feel like that would be because people just don't have expectations for them. I got expectations, and they need to capitalize on this draft class if they want to change their image, if they want to alter their future. Right now, they're a laughingstock. They're considered the bottom of the barrel of the entire NFL. General manager Nick Caserio and new head coach D'Amico Ryans, which I think was a smash hire, have 12 selections at their disposal. They have by far the most capital in terms of value in the entire class. And since moving on from Watson, this was the draft class that received the most value from that trade, so they need to benefit from it as much as possible. And on top of all of that, as we already know, this is supposed to be the draft in which they're targeting their future starting quarterback. So this class ultimately has put the franchise back on track type of potential. The class last year wasn't half bad either, so if they're able to build on that, and if they have a smash hit here in 2023, we could be seeing a new-face Texans as soon as the next 2 to 3 years, a team that's demanding a lot more respect, a franchise that's competing for the division. But if they screw this class up, or if they don't capitalize as much as I feel like they need to, they could be looking at a prolonged rebuild. It's all on the shoulders of head coach D'Amico Ryans and general manager Nick Caserio. It's going to be interesting to see how it pans out. Moving on to number 3, I have the Indianapolis Colts, and I feel terrible for this fan base because they have been through it the last few years. I would go as far as to say that in terms of preseason expectations, the Colts have been the biggest disappointment across the NFL over the last 2 years. That's because they had everybody, including themselves, fooled into believing that they were a quarterback away from being contenders in the AFC, being contenders for the Super Bowl. They attacked their ultimate goal under that assumption, and it just failed year after year after year. They have cycled through starting quarterbacks. Now they've been backed into a corner where where they pretty much have no choice but to rebuild because of how bad it's gotten. Now they are where they are today, and general manager Chris Ballard and new head coach Shane Steichen, who replaced Jeff Saturday, who replaced Frank Reich, are tasked with healing the wound that has scarred this franchise since Andrew Luck departed prematurely. They need to find a franchise quarterback. They're equipped with 9 selections, and one of them being the 4th overall pick, and I would say that the Indianapolis Colts are in one of the toughest positions of any team in the draft, purely because nobody is sure what is going to be available to them at the 4th overall pick, because as we know, the Panthers and the Texans are both taking quarterbacks at 1 and 2. Who knows if a team like the Raiders jumps up into the 3rd spot? That's very possible. Then at number 4, what are the Colts left with? Probably not a quarterback necessarily of their choice. But whatever ends up happening, they're taking a quarterback in this draft, and if this guy does not end up being their franchise quarterback of the future, then we can be looking at a whole lot more pain and just more reminiscing about how early Andrew Luck retired, and the pain is just going to continue. It really is all about moving on from the ghost of Andrew Luck, and these short-term solutions that they've come up with have only made the pain even worse. So now, if they go into this draft class and they hit on the quarterback, that wound will be healed. If they don't, well, Indianapolis Colts fans, I wish you luck. Swear to God, that was not even on purpose. Moving into the top 2, at number 2, I have the Chicago Bears. I think this regime has the weight of the world on their shoulders, and you might be asking why. Well, the answer is quite simple. New head coach Matt Eberflus and new general manager Ryan Poles were given the golden fucking key to a rebuild. They have a franchise quarterback. They had all the cap space they could possibly ask for. They have a ton of draft capital. This was a dream scenario for any NFL executive to just walk into and have plopped on their lap. And on one hand, you're thinking, that's great. They're going to steer the ship in the right direction. But on the other hand, being given these golden keys, so to speak, could almost be a curse because they cannot, and I mean cannot possibly fuck this up. I'm not saying I think they fuck it up. I'm not saying they're going to fuck it up, but God bless if they do. There's a way. There's always a way. Remaining positive and lighthearted, they had a decent free agency with some of the guys they signed. They made that massive trade with Carolina that's going to be a huge help to them. Like I said at the beginning of this video, you don't rebuild a team that has long-term sustained success through free agency, through trades. You do it in the draft. I think the Bears have a ton of pressure on their shoulders to maximize on the unbelievable capital they have in the 2023 NFL draft. They cannot screw this up. Finally, at number 1, I have the Las Vegas Raiders, who pretty much have absolutely no choice but to capitalize on the 2023 NFL draft. They have to. The regime of head coach Josh McDaniels and general manager Dave Ziegler decided to move on from Derek Carr this offseason, decided to trade Darren Waller away. They are pointing in the direction of a rebuild. But the thing is, here, let's hold our horses, the Raiders are awful at fucking drafting, and it shows. Why do you think the Raiders have had 2 winning seasons between now and 2003? 2 winning seasons! Now, after a failed 9-year experiment with Derek Carr, they're deciding to try and figure it out with someone else. At least I would think, and I would hope that's the plan. I know they signed Jimmy Garoppolo, but they cannot possibly think that's going to last any longer than the 3-year deal they signed him for. Essentially, they have 3 years to kind of figure that out, and I'm thinking this is the class to try and shoot for a quarterback. Whether they do or not, it's a different story. But regardless of what they do at quarterback, Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler are going to feel the pressure of the failure that this franchise has endured throughout the 2000s, and it's up to them in this draft class specifically with all the capital they have to try and get things back on track. They got 12 picks, including the 7th overall selection, to either find their franchise quarterback or lay a foundation for their future franchise quarterback, or maybe both. Unlike Poles and Eberflus, I really don't have much faith in Ziegler and McDaniels to truthfully figure out this entire mess. But that's beside the point. The bottom line is that these 2 guys in this franchise overall is going to be feeling pressure from all different angles. They have 12 selections to maximize this class, and I do think this could be the one that turns this ship in the right direction if they are able to get the most out of it. Like I said, whether they do or not, it's a different story. I guess we're going to find out, but I would say that the Raiders have the most pressure on their shoulders going into the 2023 NFL Draft. That'll do it. Those are the 5 teams that I think are facing the utmost pressure going into the 2023 NFL Draft. Be sure you're checking out Thrive Fantasy using code CAVE down in the description, and as always, if you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. If you want to hit the bell to be notified when I upload, I'd appreciate that. You can go over to Twitter, follow me over there. Appreciate that as well. I have a TikTok down in my description that I think you should check out, and I hope to see you in the next one.
Talking about him, and you talking about him. But you know what you're not talking about? Him!